The rain fell so hard that Penelope Vale couldn't see through the windshield, even with the wipers on full blast. And when her car made that awful grinding sound before rolling to a complete stop on the side of the mountain road, she knew her terrible day had just become catastrophic. She sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. The overdue rent notice, the rejection from the art gallery that morning, the fact that she had exactly $47 in her checking account and no idea how she would pay for whatever was wrong with her ancient Honda. She grabbed her phone, but of course, there was no signal up here in the mountains outside Seattle. The rain drummed against the roof like 1,000 tiny fists, and she felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever life reminded her that she was just barely holding it together. At 26, she had imagined her life would look different. She had thought her paintings would sell, that someone would see the beauty she tried to capture on canvas, that she would be enough for something. The knock on her window made her jump so hard she hit her elbow on the door. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could barely make out a figure, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive-looking jacket that was getting absolutely soaked. She hesitated, because this was exactly how horror movies started, but then lightning flashed and she saw his face clearly for just a moment. Strong jaw, dark hair plastered to his forehead, and eyes that looked concerned rather than threatening. She cracked the window open just an inch. "I'm fine, thank you. Your car doesn't look fine." His voice was deep, rich, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms or on the radio. "And you're stuck in the middle of nowhere in a storm. My house is just up the road. You can call for a tow truck from there." "I don't know you," she said, which felt both obvious and necessary to state. "Jackson Donnelly." He had to raise his voice over the rain. "I promise I'm not a serial killer. I just don't feel right leaving someone stranded in this weather." There was something about the way he said it, straightforward and genuine, that made her decision. Also, she was soaked from the leak that had started above her head, and the temperature was dropping. She grabbed her purse and her phone, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The rain hit her like a physical force. Jackson immediately moved closer, trying to shield her with his body as they hurried up the road. She could feel the warmth of him, solid and real beside her, and she focused on that rather than on how stupid this might be. But then they rounded a curve and she saw the house, and her steps faltered. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. Glass and stone and wood that seemed to grow out of the mountainside itself, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with warm light. The kind of place she had only seen in architecture magazines. "You live here." The words came out before she could stop them. "Yeah." He said it simply, like it was normal, and led her up the wide steps to the front door. The moment they stepped inside, the sound of the rain became muted, distant. The interior was even more stunning than the exterior, all open space and carefully chosen furniture that managed to be both modern and comfortable. "Let me get you a towel." He disappeared down a hallway, leaving her standing on the slate entryway, dripping and trying not to touch anything. She caught sight of herself in a large mirror on the wall and winced. Her blonde hair hung in wet ropes around her face, her mascara had probably run, and her thrift store jacket looked even more pathetic than usual. Jackson returned with not just a towel but a whole stack of them, plus what looked like a sweatshirt. "Bathroom's right there if you want to change. That should fit well enough." She took the offering, her fingers brushing his for just a moment, and felt an unexpected jolt of warmth. In the bathroom, which was larger than her entire studio apartment, she peeled off her wet jacket and shirt, dried herself as best she could, and pulled on the sweatshirt. It smelled like cedar and something else, something masculine and clean. It hung on her, but it was warm and dry, and she felt almost human again. When she emerged, she found him in the kitchen, which was all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. He had changed, too, now wearing dry jeans and a simple black shirt that showed off broad shoulders and strong arms. He was making tea, of all things, and gestured for her to sit at the island. "Phone's there if you need to call someone," he said, pointing to a landline on the counter. "And there's a good towing company in town. Numbers on the list next to it." She made the call, trying not to think about how much this was going to cost, and learned that the tow truck couldn't make it up the mountain road in this weather. Earliest they could come was morning. She hung up and turned to Jackson, feeling the panic start to rise again. "They can't come until tomorrow." He set a mug of tea in front of her, his expression thoughtful. "You're welcome to stay here tonight. I have plenty of guest rooms." "I can't do that. I don't even know you." "You know my name. You know where I live. You know I make a decent cup of tea." There was the hint of a smile on his face, and she found herself noticing how handsome he was, in that effortless way some men had. "Look, I get that this is weird. But the alternative is you sitting in your broken car in a storm, or walking down the mountain in the dark, or calling someone to come get you who also won't be able to make it up here until morning." He was right, and she hated that he was right. "Just for tonight. Just for tonight," he agreed. They sat at the island drinking tea while the storm raged outside, and somehow they started talking. She learned that he was 32, that he had built this house himself 3 years ago, that he spent most of his time in the city but came up here when he needed to think. He asked about her, and she found herself telling him about her art, about the constant struggle to make enough money to keep painting, about the rejection that morning. "What kind of paintings?" he asked, and he seemed genuinely interested. "Landscapes, mostly. I try to capture the way light falls on things, the way the world looks in those brief moments when everything feels magical." She immediately felt self-conscious. "That probably sounds pretentious." "It sounds like you pay attention to things most people miss." He refilled her tea without asking. "I'd like to see your work sometime. You're just being nice because I'm stranded." "I'm being nice because you're stranded, but I'm also genuinely interested in your paintings." He looked at her directly, and she felt pinned by those dark eyes. "I have a feeling you're more talented than you give yourself credit for." She didn't know what to say to that, so she took another sip of tea and changed the subject. "What do you do? Besides build mansions on mountains?" He hesitated for just a moment. "Real estate development." "Commercial properties mostly." "That must be interesting. It pays the bills," he said with a slight shrug that seemed to dismiss the topic. "Are you hungry? I was about to make dinner when I saw your car." She realized she was starving. She had skipped lunch because she couldn't afford to buy anything, and her refrigerator at home was basically empty. "I don't want to impose more than I already am." "It's not imposing if I'm offering." He was already moving around the kitchen with easy confidence, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "How do you feel about pasta?" "I feel very positively about pasta." She watched as he cooked, efficient and skilled, and they talked about everything and nothing. He asked good questions and actually listened to her answers, which was rarer than it should be. She found herself relaxing, laughing at his dry humor, enjoying the way he moved through the space like he was completely comfortable in his own skin. The pasta was incredible, homemade sauce with fresh herbs, and she couldn't remember the last time she had eaten something so good. They ate at the island, the storm still pounding outside, and it felt strangely intimate and comfortable at the same time. "Can I ask you something?" Jackson said as they were finishing. "Earlier, when you said you'd been rejected by a gallery, you had this look on your face, like it confirmed something you already believed about yourself." She put down her fork, feeling exposed. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. His voice was gentle. I think you walked into that gallery already believing they would say no, and when they did, it just reinforced whatever story you tell yourself about not being good enough. You don't know me well enough to make that assessment. Maybe not. But I know that look because I've seen it in the mirror. He leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. When I was starting out, I pitched my first development project to 23 different investors. All 23 said no. And every single time, I walked away thinking they were right to reject me, that I was crazy to think I could do this. What changed? The 24th investor said yes, and then the project succeeded. And I realized that all those rejections weren't about my worth as a person or even about the quality of my idea. They were just about fit and timing and 1,000 other factors I couldn't control. He paused. The only thing I could control was whether I quit or kept going. She felt something crack open in her chest, some small fissure in the wall she had built around her fears. That's easier said than done when you're living on $47 and can't pay your rent. Is that where you're at? He asked it quietly, without judgment. She nodded, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. I probably shouldn't have told you that. Now you definitely think I'm a disaster. I think you're someone who's fighting for something she believes in, even when it's hard. That takes courage. The way he looked at her when he said, it made her heart do something complicated in her chest. She stood up abruptly, needing distance. I should probably go to bed. It's been a long day. He showed her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment, with its own bathroom and a bed that looked like sleeping on a cloud. He gave her a new toothbrush, still in the package, and a T-shirt to sleep in, and told her to help herself to anything she needed. Thank you, she said, standing in the doorway, for everything. You didn't have to help me. Yes, I did. He said it with such certainty that she believed him. Sleep well, Penelope. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. This whole thing was surreal. She had gone from breaking down on the side of the road to standing in a mansion wearing a billionaire's T-shirt, and she had no idea what any of it meant. She climbed into the bed, which was indeed like sleeping on a cloud, and lay there listening to the rain finally starting to ease. She should be thinking about her car, about the money she didn't have, about all the practical problems waiting for her in the morning. Instead, she was thinking about the way Jackson had looked at her across the kitchen island, like he saw something in her that she couldn't see in herself. It was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of painting his face, trying to capture the exact shade of his eyes, the way his expression softened when he smiled. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and then it all came rushing back. She got up, used the bathroom, and tried to make herself presentable with the limited resources available. Her clothes from yesterday were still damp, so she kept wearing his sweatshirt and ventured out of the room. She found Jackson on the terrace, which she hadn't seen last night in the dark. It stretched out from the back of the house, offering a view of the mountains that literally took her breath away. The storm had cleared and everything was washed clean and green and perfect. Morning, he said, looking up from his laptop. He had coffee and what looked like croissants on the table beside him. Sleep okay, better than I have in months, honestly. She accepted the coffee he poured for her and sat down, trying not to stare at the view. This is unbelievable. It's why I built here. Some people think I'm crazy for living this far from the city, but I can't imagine giving this up. He closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. The towing company called. They'll be here in about an hour. Reality crashed back in. Right. Okay. I should probably get ready. Penelope. He waited until she looked at him. What's your plan? After they tow your car, figure out what's wrong with it, see if I can afford to fix it, have a small breakdown, and then deal with everything else." She tried to make it sound light, but it came out flat. "What if I have another option? I'm not taking money from you. I don't even know you. I'm not offering money. I'm offering a job." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I have a house in the city and I need someone to manage it. Coordinate with contractors, supervise repairs, work with my interior designer on the renovation. It's a full-time position for probably the next 6 months. The pay is $60,000. She nearly dropped her coffee. "You can't just offer me a job. That's insane." "Why is it insane? You need work." "I need help. You have an artist's eye for design and space, and after talking to you for a few hours last night, I trust you." He said it simply, like it made perfect sense. "You trust me based on one conversation. I've built a career on reading people. I'm good at it." He held her gaze. "You're smart, you're honest, and you care about getting things right. That's what I need. The question is whether you're willing to take the job. This feels like charity." "It's not charity. I've been looking for someone to oversee this project for weeks. I've interviewed 5 people and none of them were right. You would actually be doing me a favor." He paused. "And if you're worried about owing me something, don't. This is business. You'll work, I'll pay you, and if either of us isn't happy with the arrangement, we part ways. Simple." Nothing about this was simple, but Penelope found herself considering it. $60,000 would change her life. She could pay her rent, fix her car, buy supplies, and actually focus on her painting instead of constantly scrambling for money. And the work itself sounded interesting, the kind of creative problem-solving she enjoyed. "What's the catch?" she asked. "No catch, except that I can be demanding when it comes to quality, and I need someone who can handle that." "I can handle demanding." She took a breath. "Okay, yes. I'll take the job." The smile that crossed his face was genuine and warm, and it made her stomach flip. "Good. When can you start?" "Apparently right now, since I don't have transportation. I'll drive you to get your things, and then I'll show you the property." He stood up, all business now. "This is going to work out well, Penelope. I can feel it." She wished she had his certainty, but she nodded and followed him inside. The tow truck arrived as promised, and she watched them load up her pathetic Honda with a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Jackson handled everything, giving them the address of a mechanic in town and telling them to call him with the estimate. She tried to protest, but he cut her off. "You're working for me now. This is a business expense. You need a functioning vehicle." It was too much, all of it, but she was too overwhelmed to argue anymore. She climbed into his car, a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than she had made in the last 3 years, and they headed down the mountain toward Seattle. "Tell me about this house I'm going to be managing," she said, needing to focus on something practical. "It's in Capitol Hill. Built in 1925, and it's been through about 6 different owners who all started renovations and never finished. I bought it 4 months ago and it's a disaster. But it has good bones, and I want to restore it properly, honor the original architecture while making it functional for modern living." He glanced at her. "I have a designer who's done the plans, but I need someone on site to make sure the contractors actually follow through, to make decisions when problems come up, to keep everything moving forward." "Why do you want this house? You already have that beautiful place on the mountain." "This is for my sister. She's moving back to Seattle in 8 months, and I want it ready for her." His voice softened. "She's been going through a difficult time, and I want to give her a fresh start, somewhere beautiful and solid in hers." Penelope felt something warm spread through her chest. "That's really sweet. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation as a ruthless businessman to maintain." She laughed, and he smiled, and the drive passed quickly. He took her to her apartment first, and she saw him take in the shabby building, the narrow stairs, the peeling paint. She felt self-conscious as she unlocked her door and let him inside, acutely aware of how small and cramped everything was, how the furniture was all second-hand, how the paint supplies took up half the space. But he didn't say anything about any of that. He walked straight to the canvases stacked against the wall and started looking through them. "May I?" he asked, and she nodded, her heart in her throat. She watched his face as he studied each painting, really looked at them, taking his time. She had done mostly landscapes from around the city, parks and mountains and water, trying to capture the particular quality of Pacific Northwest light. There were a few portraits too, studies of people she had seen and wanted to remember. Penelope. His voice was quiet. "These are extraordinary." "You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it to be nice. I'm saying it because it's true." He turned to look at her. "That gallery that rejected you, they're idiots." She felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away. "Thank you. I want to buy this one." He pointed to a painting she had done of the Olympic Mountains at sunset, all gold and purple and rose. "How much?" "I can't sell you a painting. You just gave me a job." "The job and the painting are separate things. How much would you normally charge for a piece this size?" She named a number, probably too low, but it was what she had been asking. He pulled out his phone and did a transfer right there. Her phone buzzed with the notification, and she stared at it in disbelief. "Now pack what you need for a few days," he said. "You can stay in the guest house at the property while you're working on it. It's small, but it's functional, and it'll make things easier than you commuting from here every day." "Jackson, I can't keep accepting things from you." "You're not accepting things. You're working, and I'm providing housing because it makes sense for the project." He met her eyes. "Let me help you, Penelope. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I want to see what you can do when you're not constantly worried about survival." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and started packing. 20 minutes later, her life fit into 2 suitcases and a bag of art supplies. It was depressing and liberating at the same time. The house in Capitol Hill was exactly as he had described, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The exterior was classic craftsman, all stone and wood in character, but the inside was gutted and chaotic. But she could see the potential, the way the light came through the windows, the original hardwood under the construction dust, the built-in bookshelves that just needed restoration. "Oh, this is going to be gorgeous," she breathed, walking through the space. Jackson watched her with a pleased expression. "I knew you'd see it." The guest house was separate, a small structure at the back of the property that had already been renovated. It was cozy, with a kitchenette and a bathroom and a loft bedroom, and it had clearly been set up for someone to live in while work was happening on the main house. "This is perfect," she said, setting down her bags. "When do I start? How about tomorrow?" "Give yourself today to settle in, look over the plans, get familiar with the timeline." He handed her a folder thick with documents. All the contracts with the various contractors, the designers' renderings, the schedule. "My number's in there too. Call me if you need anything. Jackson." She caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Why are you really doing this?" He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "Because last night, talking to you, I felt more like myself than I have in months, and I want to see what happens if I follow that feeling." Before she could respond, he was gone, the sound of his car fading down the driveway. She stood in the doorway of the guest house, her heart pounding, wondering what she had just gotten herself into. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Penelope threw herself into the renovation with an intensity that surprised her. She was good at this, she discovered, the coordination and the problem-solving and the creative decisions. The contractors respected her because she spoke to them with respect, listened to their input, but also held firm on the standards Jackson had set. She worked with the interior designer, a sharp woman named Claire who was initially skeptical but warmed up when she realized Penelope had an eye for space and light. Jackson came by every few days, checking progress, and every time he did, they ended up talking for hours. About the house, yes, but also about everything else. Their conversations ranged from philosophy to favorite foods to childhood memories. She learned that he had grown up middle class, that he had built his company from nothing, that his sister Rebecca meant everything to him. He learned about her small-town upbringing, her parents who didn't understand her need to create, her determination to make it on her own even when it was hard. There was something building between them, electric and undeniable. The way his hand would brush hers when he handed her coffee. The way she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way they both found excuses to extend their conversations, neither wanting to be the first to leave. But Penelope kept a careful distance, even as she felt herself falling. Because Jackson was a billionaire, she had learned. Not just successful but genuinely wealthy in a way she couldn't comprehend. She had looked him up online after that first week, curious, and found articles about Donnelly development, about the projects he had completed all over the country, about his estimated net worth that made her dizzy. They were from different worlds, and she couldn't let herself forget that. No matter how easy he was to talk to, no matter how he made her feel seen and valued and important, this was temporary. The job would end, she would move on, and he would find someone more appropriate, someone who fit into his life. But then came the night everything changed. She was working late, going over invoices in the main house because the lighting was better, when Jackson appeared in the doorway. She hadn't expected him and she jumped, scattering papers. "Sorry," he said, helping her pick them up. "I should have called. It's your house." "You don't need to call." She stacked the papers back together, aware of how close he was. "Is everything okay? Can I be honest with you about something?" Her heart started racing. "Of course. I didn't hire you just because I needed help with the house." He straightened, looking at her directly. "I hired you because I couldn't stop thinking about you after that night and I wanted a reason to see you again." She froze, the papers clutched in her hands. "Jackson, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I know this is complicated. I know I'm your employer and that makes this inappropriate. But Penelope, every time I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see the world in this beautiful way that makes me want to see it that way too. You don't know me." "Not really." She heard the tremor in her own voice. "You see some romanticized version because we met in dramatic circumstances, but I'm just a struggling artist who can barely keep her life together. That's not what I see." He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from him. "I see someone brave enough to pursue her dreams even when it means sacrifice. I see someone kind and honest and so talented it makes me angry that the world hasn't recognized it yet. I see someone I want to know better, if she'll let me. I'm not enough for someone like you." The words burst out of her, all her fear and insecurity rising to the surface. "You need someone sophisticated and elegant and comfortable in your world. I don't even own a dress that didn't come from a thrift store. I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I can't stop." He cupped her face in his hands, gentle but firm. "Penelope, look at me." She did, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "You are more than enough. You're more than every dream I've had about what I wanted in a partner. Your bank account doesn't define your worth. Your wardrobe doesn't define your value. You define those things by how you move through the world, and I have never met anyone who does it with more grace and courage than you." What if I'm not enough? She whispered, voicing her deepest fear. What if you get to know the real me and you're disappointed? Impossible. He said it with such certainty. I already know the real you. I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion on this house because you care about doing it right. I've seen you stop to help that elderly neighbor carry in her groceries. I've heard you on the phone with your parents, patient even when they don't understand you. I've seen your art, which is basically looking directly into your soul, and all of you, is extraordinary. A tear slipped down her cheek and he caught it with his thumb. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, he smiled slightly, but I think you're worth being scared for. And then he kissed her, soft and sweet and certain, and she felt something slot into place inside her chest, like a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing suddenly returning. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, letting herself feel all the want and hope and terrifying possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. This is crazy, she said, probably. We barely know each other. Then we'll learn. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Unless you don't want this, if you don't, tell me now and we'll go back to just working together. I promise it won't be weird. It will definitely be weird. Okay, yes, it will be weird. But I'll respect your choice. She thought about it, about all the reasons this was a bad idea, about the power imbalance and the different worlds and the risk of getting hurt. And then she thought about the way he made her feel, like she was capable of anything, like her dreams weren't foolish but worthwhile. I want this, she said. I want you, even though it terrifies me. His smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. Yeah. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she let herself fall into it, into him, into the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could have this. That maybe she was enough after all. They took it slow after that night, which was both frustrating and wonderful. Jackson was serious about wanting to do this right, about not just jumping into something physical without building a real foundation. They went on actual dates, dinners where they talked until the restaurant closed, walks through the city where he showed her places he loved, a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands where they hiked and kayaked and talked until they were hoarse. Penelope learned that he was funny, with a dry wit that caught her off guard, that he was generous but not showy about it, that he donated to dozens of charities but never publicized it, that he was protective of the people he loved, fiercely loyal, and that he had a sweetness to him that contradicted his ruthless business reputation. She also learned that he was demanding in his standards but fair, that he hated mushrooms with an irrational passion, that he played piano beautifully, but only when he thought no one was listening, that he had wanted to be an architect before he fell into development, that he still sketched building designs in the margins of his notebooks, and he learned her too. He learned that she was stubborn and independent to a fault, that she had to be coaxed into accepting help because she had been on her own for so long, that she loved thunderstorms and terrible reality TV, that she painted when she was upset because it was the only way she could process her emotions, that she had a talent for bringing out the best in people, for making them feel seen and valued. The house renovation progressed beautifully, ahead of schedule and under budget. Penelope coordinated everything with a skill that impressed even Claire, who told Jackson that he had better keep her on permanently. The main structure was sound now, the systems all updated, and they were moving into the finishing touches, the details that would make it a home. 4 months into the relationship, Jackson took her to dinner at a restaurant so fancy she almost refused to go in. But he had bought her a dress, deep green silk that made her feel like someone else, someone confident and beautiful. And when she saw the way he looked at her, she felt that way too. "I have something to tell you," he said over dessert, his expression serious. Her stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad. At least, I hope you won't think it's bad." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Rebecca is moving back next month instead of in 3 months. She's excited about the house and she wants to meet you." "Meet me?" Penelope's heart started pounding. "As in, meet me, like the person you're dating." "Yes, is that okay? Your sister is important to you. What if she doesn't like me? She'll love you. How could she not?" He squeezed her hand. "But I understand if you're nervous. Family stuff is always complicated." "What have you told her about me?" "That you're brilliant and talented and kind. That you make me happier than I've been in years. That I'm falling in love with you." She nearly knocked over her water glass. "What? I'm falling in love with you, Penelope. Actually, that's a lie. I've already fallen. I'm completely, hopelessly in love with you." He said it calmly, like he was commenting on the weather. "You don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know." "Jackson." Her voice came out strangled. It's okay," he smiled. "I know you need time. I know trust is hard for you. I can wait." But she didn't want him to wait, because the truth was she loved him too. Had probably loved him since that first night when he made her tea and told her she was courageous. She was just terrified of saying it out loud, of making it real. "I love you too," she blurted out and then laughed at herself. "That was not romantic at all. I'm sorry. I'm terrible at this." "Say it again." "I love you." This time she said it clearly, firmly, meaning every syllable. "I love you, Jackson Donnelly. Even though you're rich and I'm broke and we don't make sense on paper, I love you." He stood up, came around the table, and kissed her right there in front of everyone. She didn't care who was watching. She just held on to him and kissed him back and felt the last of her walls crumbling down. Meeting Rebecca was less terrifying than Penelope expected, mainly because Rebecca was warm and funny and immediately put her at ease. She was younger than Jackson by 3 years, with the same dark hair and sharp intelligence. She had been living in London for work but was moving back to be closer to family, to rebuild her life after a difficult divorce. "So you're the one who's been making my brother smile like an idiot," Rebecca said, giving Penelope a hug. "Thank God. He's been wound too tight for years." They toured the house together, Rebecca exclaiming over every detail, nearly crying when she saw how perfectly they had honored the original character while making it modern and functional. Penelope watched her reaction, feeling a sense of satisfaction deeper than anything she had felt finishing a painting. "You did this?" Rebecca asked, spinning to face her. "Jackson said you managed it, but I didn't realize you had this level of input. Claire did the design work." "I just made sure it all came together." "Don't let her downplay it," Jackson said from the doorway. "She made hundreds of decisions, solved countless problems, and turned my vision into something better than I imagined." "Well, I love it." Rebecca hugged Penelope again. "And I love that you'll be right down the street." Penelope had moved into an apartment near the property 2 weeks earlier, a much nicer place that she could now afford thanks to her salary. Jackson had wanted her to move in with him, but she had insisted on her own space, needing to prove to herself that she could stand on her own 2 feet even while being with him. He had understood, even though she knew it disappointed him. It was one of the things she loved about him, the way he respected her boundaries even when they were inconvenient. The job officially ended a week after Rebecca moved in, the house complete and beautiful. Penelope felt oddly bereft, walking through the empty rooms one last time, remembering all the work and care that had gone into them. This had been more than just a job. It had been a transformation for the house and for her. "What are you going to do now?" Jackson asked, finding her in what had been her favorite room, the library with its restored built-ins and big windows overlooking the garden. "I don't know. Look for another project, I guess. Keep painting." She turned to him. Maybe finally have that show I've been dreaming about. About that. He pulled out his phone and showed her an email. Remember when I bought that painting from you? I hung it in my office. And last month a client saw it and asked who the artist was. She's a gallery owner and she wants to meet you. Penelope stared at the email, hardly daring to believe it. Are you serious? Completely. She's seen photos of your other work and she thinks she can sell them. She wants to set up a show in 3 months. He watched her face. Is that something you want? Want, Jackson, that's everything I've wanted. But she stopped, suddenly uncertain. Did you arrange this? Because if you're calling in favors for me, I didn't arrange anything. I just hung a painting because I loved it. Margaret saw it, asked about it, and I gave her your contact information. Everything else is based on the quality of your work. He cupped her face. You're talented, Penelope. The world is finally starting to notice. That has nothing to do with me. She wanted to believe him. And looking at his face, at the pride and certainty there, she found that she did. Okay, yes, I'll meet with her. Good. He kissed her softly. Now, about that other thing. I know you wanted your own space and I respect that. But my lease on the mountain house is about to expire and I've been thinking about where I want to live next. You don't lease that house, you built it. Okay, yes, I own it. Bad phrasing. He smiled slightly. What I'm trying to say, very badly, is that I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like. Her heart started racing. Jackson, I'm not proposing, not yet. He held her gaze. I know we've only been together for 5 months. I know that's fast. But I also know what I want, and it's you. So I'm asking if you would consider, maybe, possibly, moving in with me. We can find a place together, somewhere that's ours, not mine or yours, but both of ours. She thought about it, about all her fears and insecurities, about the voice in her head that still sometimes whispered that she wasn't enough, that this was all too good to be true. But then she thought about Jackson, about the way he loved her consistently and certainly, never wavering even when she doubted herself, about the way he had believed in her before she believed in herself. Yes, she said, I want that too. His smile was incandescent. Yeah. Let's find a place together. Build something that's ours. He kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise, and she kissed him back, finally believing that she deserved this happiness, this love, this future. They found a loft in Pioneer Square. Big windows and exposed brick, and enough space for her to have a proper studio. It was beautiful and imperfect and exactly right. They moved in together on a Saturday in September, all their friends helping, Rebecca directing traffic like a general, and Penelope felt more at home than she ever had anywhere. The gallery show happened in November, and it was more successful than she had dared to hope. Margaret was good at her job and she had framed Penelope's work beautifully, lit it perfectly, and invited the right people. By the end of the opening night, 12 paintings had sold, and Penelope had commissions for 6 more. She stood in the middle of the gallery, overwhelmed and exhilarated, and Jackson wrapped his arms around her from behind. I'm so proud of you, he murmured in her ear. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. It might have taken longer, but you would have gotten here. This talent, this vision, it's all you. She turned in his arms and kissed him, not caring who saw. Thank you for believing in me, always. 3 months later, on a February evening with snow falling softly outside, Jackson made dinner at home. He had been doing that more often lately, cooking for her, and she loved those quiet evenings together more than any fancy restaurant. They ate at the island in their kitchen, talking about their days, and she told him about the commission she had just started, a series of paintings for a hotel lobby. He told her about a new project he was considering, a mixed-use development that would include affordable housing and community spaces. You're doing something different lately, she observed. Your projects, they're more focused on community impact. You've influenced me, he smiled. You made me think about what I'm building and why. About using what I have to make things better, not just more profitable. That's all you, not me. It's us. We make each other better. After dinner, he took her hand and led her to the living room where she noticed for the first time that he had lit candles, that there was soft music playing. Her heart started pounding. Jackson, what? I told you I wasn't proposing back in June, that I knew it was too soon. He turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. But it's been almost a year now. A year of waking up next to you and falling asleep with you. A year of watching you build your career and chase your dreams. A year of building a life together. He got down on one knee and she stopped breathing entirely. Penelope Vale, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. You challenge me, inspire me, and make me want to be better in every way. You see beauty in everything, and you make me see it too. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. He pulled out a ring box, opened it to reveal a simple, perfect diamond. Will you marry me? What if I'm not enough? She whispered, the old fear rising one more time. You are more than enough. You are more than every dream I've had. You are everything. He said it firmly, certainly, and she felt the last shadow of doubt dissolve. Marry me, Penelope. Build a life with me. Let me spend the rest of my days proving to you how extraordinary you are. Yes, the word came out strong and clear. Yes, I'll marry you. I love you so much. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like a promise, like a beginning. And when they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, she realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She had found someone who saw her completely, all her flaws and fears and dreams, and loved her not despite them but because of them. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the mountain house where they had first met. It was just family and close friends, Rebecca as the maid of honor, Jackson's best friend from college as the best man. Penelope wore a simple dress, white lace that made her feel like herself but elevated, and Jackson wore a suit that made him look even more handsome than usual. She walked herself down the aisle because she had made it this far on her own and wanted to honor that. But Jackson met her halfway, unable to wait. They said their vows on the terrace overlooking the mountains, promising to love and support and challenge each other, to build a life of purpose and meaning together. When they kissed as husband and wife, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing everything in golden light, and Penelope thought about how far she had come. From that terrified girl stranded on the side of the road, convinced she wasn't enough, to this woman who knew her worth, who had found love and purpose and belonging. At the reception, Rebecca gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about how Jackson had always been the strong one, the one who took care of everyone else, and how beautiful it was to see someone taking care of him for a change. Penelope, you've given my brother something I didn't think anyone could give him, Rebecca said, raising her glass. You've given him permission to be vulnerable, to dream about something beyond the next project. You've made him happy, and I love you for it. Later, dancing with Jackson under string lights as their friends and family laughed and celebrated around them, Penelope felt overwhelmed with gratitude. What are you thinking? Jackson asked, his hand warm on her back. That I almost didn't get out of the car that night. I almost just sat there in the rain, too scared to accept help from a stranger. She looked up at him, and I would have missed all of this. But you did get out. You were brave enough to take the risk. He kissed her forehead. That's what I love about you. Even when you're terrified, you keep moving forward. Only because you taught me that moving forward was possible. We taught each other. They danced until late, and when they finally left for their honeymoon, being showered with flower petals and good wishes, Penelope felt like the luckiest person in the world. 2 years later, they were sitting in the nursery they had set up in their loft, Penelope rocking their 3-month-old daughter while Jackson assembled what seemed like the 10th piece of baby furniture. "I think this bookshelf is mocking me," he said, staring at the incomprehensible instructions. "You've built skyscrapers. You can build a bookshelf. Skyscrapers make sense. This is chaos." Emma, their daughter, made a small sound and they both froze, waiting to see if she would wake up. But she just sighed and settled deeper into sleep, her tiny fist curled against Penelope's chest. "She's so perfect," Penelope whispered, looking down at the small face, the dark hair that came from Jackson, the nose that was somehow already unmistakably hers. "She is, just like her mother." Jackson abandoned the bookshelf and came to sit beside them, wrapping his arm around Penelope's shoulders. "How are you doing? Really? Tired? Overwhelmed? Incredibly happy?" She leaned against him. "Is it normal to be this happy? It feels almost excessive." "I think we've earned it." He kissed the top of her head. "After everything we've been through to get here." Penelope thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The terror and uncertainty of those early days, the slow building of trust. The way they had learned each other, chosen each other, every single day. The wedding, the honeymoon, the decision to start a family. The pregnancy that had been harder than expected, the labor that had been long but ultimately safe, the overwhelming rush of love when they first held their daughter. "I want to paint this," she said suddenly. "This moment right here, the three of us in this room building our life." "Then you should." He looked at the canvas set up in the corner, the commission she had been working on before Emma was born. "When are you going back to work?" "Margaret is flexible. She says whenever I'm ready." Penelope had built a steady career over the past 3 years, her paintings selling consistently, her reputation growing. But right now, she just wanted to be present for this, for the fleeting newborn stage, for the adjustment to being a family. "Maybe in a few months. We'll figure it out. We always do." Emma stirred again, her eyes fluttering open, and immediately started fussing. Jackson took her carefully, cradling her against his chest with the confidence he had developed over the past 3 months, and she settled immediately. "She likes you better," Penelope said, only half joking. "Impossible. You're the one with the food supply." He swayed gently, humming something tuneless, and Emma's eyes drifted closed again. "But I do seem to have a knack for the sleeping part." Watching them together, her husband and her daughter, Penelope felt emotion swell in her chest. This was what she had been afraid of missing, back when she couldn't imagine that she deserved happiness. This ordinary, extraordinary moment of building a life with someone she loved, creating a family, having everything she had dreamed of and more. "What if I'm not enough?" she had asked that night, so certain that she would disappoint him eventually. And he had told her she was more than every dream he'd had. Looking at him now, at the life they had built together, she finally, completely believed it. 5 years after that, on the anniversary of the night they met, Jackson surprised her with a trip back to the mountain house. They had kept it, using it as a weekend retreat, but they hadn't been up in months between work and raising Emma, who was now a precocious 5-year-old, and their son Leo, who had just turned 2. Rebecca had agreed to watch the kids for the weekend, and Penelope had been looking forward to the quiet, to the chance to reconnect with Jackson without the constant demands of parenting and careers. But when they arrived at the house, she found something unexpected. He had converted one of the spare rooms into an art studio for her. North-facing windows for the light, custom storage for her supplies, an easel positioned perfectly to capture the view of the mountains. It was everything she needed and more, thoughtful and beautiful and so perfectly Jackson. "I know you have your studio at home," he said, watching her take it all in. "But I thought maybe you'd like a space here too, somewhere you could come when you need to create without interruption." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "It's perfect. I want you to have everything, Penelope. Every opportunity, every resource, every chance to make the art you're meant to make." He pulled her close. "You've never stopped being that brave person who got out of the car in the storm. You've just added so much more to who you are. I couldn't have done any of it without you." "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." He kissed her soft and sweet. "I'm glad we found each other that night, glad you were brave enough to trust me, glad we built this life." "Me too." She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all the love and gratitude and joy. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for believing in me until I could believe too." "Always," he said, echoing that promise he had made years ago. "Always and forever." They spent the weekend reconnecting, talking and laughing and making love like they had all the time in the world. Penelope painted a study of the mountains, trying to capture the particular quality of the light that had first drawn her to this place. And she thought about the girl she had been, stranded and scared and certain she wasn't enough. That girl was still part of her, the uncertainty and the determination and the stubborn independence. But she had grown around those things, adding layers of confidence and love and purpose. She was an artist now, successful in her own right. A mother, devoted and present. A wife, partnered with someone who made her better and who she made better in return. The painting she had done that weekend, of the mountains bathed in golden light, ended up being her most celebrated work. It sold for a significant sum, the money of which she donated to a foundation supporting young artists, wanting to give others the chance she had been given, to help them believe they were enough. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows on the same terrace where they had first married. Emma and Leo stood beside them, both dressed up and trying to be solemn but unable to stop giggling. Their friends and family surrounded them, Rebecca with her new partner, Jackson's business associates who had become genuine friends, Penelope's parents who had finally come to understand and support her path. "10 years ago, I promised to love you for the rest of my life," Jackson said, holding both her hands. "And every single day since then, I've discovered new reasons why that was the easiest promise I've ever made. You are my partner, my best friend, the love of my life. You make everything better just by being in it. I would choose you every time, in every lifetime." Penelope could barely see through her tears. 10 years ago, I was terrified that I wasn't enough for you, that I would disappoint you eventually. But you taught me that enough isn't something we have to earn or prove. It's something we are, inherently, by being ourselves. You've loved me at my worst and my best, through struggles and triumphs, and never wavered. You are my home, Jackson, my safe place, my greatest adventure. I love you more now than I did 10 years ago, and I'll love you even more 10 years from now." They kissed while everyone cheered, and Emma made gagging sounds that made everyone laugh, and Leo clapped because everyone else was clapping. And Penelope felt the profound satisfaction of being exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with. Later, dancing with Jackson while their children played with their cousins and friends celebrated around them, she thought about the question she had asked all those years ago. The question that had haunted her for so long: what if I'm not enough? And she heard his answer, as clearly as if he were saying it now. You are more than enough. You are more than every dream I've had. She had spent the first part of her life trying to prove her worth, to earn love and recognition and belonging. But Jackson had taught her that she didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to be herself, fully and completely, and let herself be loved for exactly who she was. That was the real gift he had given her, more valuable than the job or the house or the opportunities. He had given her the permission to believe in herself, to see herself as worthy, to understand that she had always been enough. And in return, she had given him the same thing. She had seen past the wealth and the success to the man underneath, had loved him not for what he could provide but for who he was, had challenged him to think bigger, to use his resources for good, to build a life of meaning rather than just accomplishment. They had saved each other, really, in all the ways that mattered. As the party wound down and they said goodbye to their guests, Emma fell asleep on Jackson's shoulder and Leo curled in Penelope's arms. They carried them to bed together, working in the synchronized way of parents who had done this 1,000 times, tucking them in and kissing their foreheads. Back in their own room, getting ready for bed, Penelope caught Jackson watching her in the mirror. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how perfect this life is. Not perfect, but pretty wonderful, more than wonderful." He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penelope Donnelly, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than that 24th investor who said yes, infinitely better." He kissed her neck. "That got me a successful company. You gave me a life worth living." She turned in his arms and kissed him properly, pouring everything she felt into it. 10 years of love and partnership and choosing each other every day. 10 years of growth and challenge and building something beautiful together. "I love you," she said when they finally broke apart. "Thank you for stopping that night, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for loving me into believing I was enough." "You were always enough," he said softly. "I just helped you see what was already there." They climbed into bed together, curled around each other the way they had done for 10 years, and Penelope felt completely at peace. This was her life now, full and rich and more than she had ever imagined. She was an artist, a mother, a wife, a friend. She was loved and she loved in return. She was enough, she had always been enough. And as she drifted off to sleep in Jackson's arms, she thought about that girl stranded on the side of the road, terrified and certain that she would never measure up. She wished she could go back and tell her not to worry, that everything would work out better than she could imagine. That the stranger who stopped to help would become the love of her life. That all her dreams would come true, and new dreams she didn't even know she had would come true too. But maybe that girl needed to take the journey herself, needed to learn and grow and discover her own worth. Maybe that was the point of it all. Years later, when Emma was applying to art school and doubting herself, Penelope would tell her the story of that night. The car breaking down, the stranger who stopped, the question she had asked and the answer he had given. "What if I'm not enough?" Emma would say, echoing her mother's old fear, and Penelope would cup her daughter's face and say with absolute certainty, "You are more than enough. You are more than every dream I've had for you. You just need to believe it yourself." Emma would go on to become a sculptor, creating beautiful things from raw materials, and she would credit her mother with teaching her that art wasn't about being perfect, it was about being authentic, about bringing your whole self to the work and trusting that it was enough. Leo would become an architect, designing buildings that honored the environment and served communities, and he would say his father taught him that success wasn't measured in profit but in impact, that the point of having resources was to use them to make the world better. And Jackson and Penelope would watch their children grow and thrive and build their own lives, and they would know that the best thing they had given them wasn't money or opportunity, but the example of what love looked like. Real love, the kind that saw you completely and chose you anyway. The kind that made you better without demanding you change. The kind that said, every single day, You are enough exactly as you are. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and friends, Jackson would stand up to make a toast. His hair would be silver by then, lines around his eyes, but he would still be strong and handsome and utterly hers. 50 years ago, he would say, his voice still strong. I was driving home in a storm and I saw a car broken down on the side of the road, and I made the best decision of my life. I stopped. Everyone would laugh because they had all heard this story 100 times, but they would listen anyway because it never got old. I met a woman that night who would change everything, who would teach me what really mattered, who would give me a life beyond my wildest dreams. He would look at Penelope then, his eyes full of love. She asked me once if she was enough, and I told her she was more than every dream I'd had. 50 years later, I stand by that. Penelope, you are still more than every dream. You always have been. You always will be. And Penelope, older now but still fierce and creative and full of life, would stand and take his hand. She would look at this man who had seen her when she couldn't see herself, who had loved her into believing she was worthy, who had built a beautiful life with her brick by brick and day by day. I love you, she would say, simple and true. Thank you for stopping. I'll always stop for you, he would say, always and forever. And they would kiss while everyone cheered, just like they had all those years ago. Two people who had found each other against the odds and built something lasting and true. A love story that started with a question and an answer, with doubt and certainty, with fear and courage. What if I'm not enough? You are more than every dream I've had. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the money or the success or the accolades. Just two people choosing each other every single day, building a life of love and purpose and belonging. Just the knowledge that you were seen, truly seen and loved for exactly who you were. That was enough. That was everything. That was the story of Penelope and Jackson Donnelly, told and retold through the years. A reminder to everyone who heard it that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help, trust someone, and believe that you might just be worthy of love after all. Because you are. Everyone is. You just need to find the person who helps you see it.